June 27th, 2014 Energy and the Environment Committee meeting. Let's go ahead and ask my colleagues who are not in attendance to make their way to the committee, although I think we're not going to have a quorum today, but we can go ahead and begin as a subcommittee. Let's go ahead, Mr. Clerk, Mr. CLA, rather, if we could start with items 1 and 2, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Rafael Breda with the CLA's office. Item number 1 relates to Department of Water and Power report, including CAO and City Attorney reports and ordinance relative to proposed bundled solar project, power purchase agreement, competitive offer purchase offers well. And item number 2 relates to a similar matter, DWP, CAO, City Attorney reports relative to the Beacon Solar power purchase agreement with Hecate Energy.
Very good. We'll go ahead and take those items concurrently since they pertain to very similar items for sake of discussion. Anybody who has a card that would like to speak, I would encourage you to go ahead and submit it soon. So as soon as we're done with the presentation, we will take public speakers on items 1 and 2. With that, DWP.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Randy Howard. I'm the Senior Assistant General Manager of the Power System. I have with me today Randy Krager and John Dennis of the Power System. And we are here today to seek your support and approval of 2 different packages for solar energy, initially related to our Beacon Solar project site. This is a structure that's a little unique, different than we've done historically. The department went out and procured the land and all the solar rights of a permitted project site for solar. It's near our Pine Tree Wind Farm and near where our new transmission line is going to terminate, the Barron Ridge Renewable Transmission Line. So we procured the site. We're bringing a transmission interconnection to that site, building a collector station, building the roads. And this project is we subdivided that site into 5 different parcels. We bid out 4 of those parcels in a bundled approach, seeking developers that would come in, build those parcels, but also commit to build solar on rooftops within the city of LA under a competitive fit process. So we had about 28 or so developers that bid. We went through a process of review on all the terms and conditions of those offers. We ended up negotiating, and before you today is a proposal to enter into agreements with 2 different developers, Sun Edison and Hecate, for the 4 parcels. And they have also committed under separate agreements to build solar within the city. These are some of the most competitive prices, I think, in the industry so far for solar projects on the large scale, and we're averaging about 12.5 cents for the rooftop projects. The second board package is an incremental 50 megawatts that is not a bundled package. It's just for a 50 megawatt parcel that we had initially thought we would construct a little differently. Looking at the proposals we received, we decided to bid that out separately. We've received proposals, and we're proposing to award that to Hecate 2 to build out, and that would be a standalone without the fit component. Again, some of the most competitive pricing we've seen as of yet. The rate impacts are minimal to our ratepayers because of the competitive pricing that we've seen here. At that point, if you have any specific questions, we'd be willing to answer those, but we would seek your approval.
Just a couple. One, if you could help me understand sort of how these projects and purchase agreements, how were the agreements structured? How do they fit into our RPS goals? And it's my understanding that the combined cost of the Beacon bundled project and Fit 50 is estimated at $41 million annually over the entire 25-year term. And it's my sense that that figure was determined a while ago. Are we still sort of where we need to be in terms of that estimate?
Yeah, so since it was through a regular RFP process, those prices were fixed. So even at the beginning, so that is still on target, and just a little over $900 million for the whole 25 years going forward.
And how does that fit into the overall sort of RPS? Is this keeping us on track?
Yeah, this is keeping us on track to help us reach 25% by the end of 2016, and we'll continue to provide for our portfolio for 33% on 2020 and beyond. The large-scale portion at Beacon provides 2.2% of that 25%, and the Fit 50 portion is just under 0.4%.
Very
of
good.
that portion of our RP.
And in terms of the Fit 50 portion, the in-basin development, can you give us a sense as to sort of what that's going to look like, where, how, and when that will be developed?
So that 50 portion is all within basin, and the developers are planning on doing that mostly on rooftops going forward and major disturbed open land, if at all.
Very good. Any sense as to sort of how that selection will be done, or when we'll have an idea as to what that framework will look like?
So it is our understanding and discussions with those two developers that they have been working with a number of large rooftop owners and operators within the city, and we're expected as soon as these contracts are approved, they will give us those locations and start working with us on the interconnections for those locations. They have committed to our team that they believe they're going to be all rooftops, but there could be, as discussed, maybe some parking lot or some other disturbed type of land.
Very good. If the CAO wouldn't mind sort of helping us understand a little bit about sort of your perspective on the process. I know that there have been some suggestions made sort of going forward after this project. I think it's important for us to hear those.
Robert Roth, CIO's office. Our offices work closely with the Department of Water and Power. We do support this project, and we've identified several areas for improvement. Primarily, those are they're process-oriented. I mean, some of them include providing support for some of the analysis providing support and analysis for price assumptions and valuations of these very large investments, specifically related to the purchase options. There is a forecast that goes out 25 years, and we're not confident that enough is known about the future. I mean, the most difficult thing is to forecast the future. So we're constraining ourselves with these contracts to set prices. And on one hand, it does protect the developers. On the other hand, that's at the low end of these price structures. At the high end of the structure, it protects the department. We're just not certain that those price ranges are appropriate, though. So we'd also like to see comparisons to other projects. The department has often said location's important, and we agree. However, we'd still like to see some comparisons to nearby projects as well as maybe even out-of-state projects. Some of them are looking rather interesting. So another area is to standardize the contracting process to increase the what we see as the competitiveness of the process, as well as to bring current projects to the council for approval. At present, it seems that the process is taking in excess of a year, and in this market, it seems to be a significant amount of time that it's a declining market, and so that amount of time is having an impact on the prices that we see in our contracts, we believe. Another area for concern is comparisons to the department's own forecast for what the project prices are. We'd like to see a current forecast that reflects the current market conditions. We've met with the department. They've agreed to review these suggestions, and we'll see those on future projects, we hope.
Very good. If we could ask the ratepayer to come up and sort of give us their perspective on this package of projects here.
From the ratepayer perspective, Fred Pickle, Office of Public Accountability, Ratepayer Advocate. This project is unusual in one component in that DWP purchased land that already had permits underway and did additional development. And looked at alone, these prices are quite competitive. However, for a fair comparison, you have to consider the $85 million that the department spent on the site and development. And if you count that in, the prices are still in what appears to be a competitive range. You end up with, depending on your assumptions, prices between about 6.5 and 7 cents a kilowatt hour.
Very good.
And we support these projects. We think this is competitive and they should move ahead.
In terms of sort of the financial analysis, I mean, I know that largely the commission sees all of this stuff, all of this information, and then it eventually makes its way to the council. With the sort of CAO recommendations and information that would, I think, help sharpen the pencils, at least on the analysis. Any perspective from you, Dr. Pickle, on the information, the workflow, when you get it, how you get it?
We'd prefer sooner.
Sure. So would I.
And these projects have taken longer to negotiate. This process has been fairly quick, with the bids having been received in the fall. Am I correct on the timing of that? That's correct. And they have been concluded in about 9 months. We would prefer to have a longer period of time to evaluate them. And heads up, even if negotiations aren't complete.
Sure. I just talking out loud here, I hear from one sense we want to sort of figure out how to shorten the window. We need more analysis. So there's a sweet spot in there that I think we're going to have to try to strive for. But the other thing that I wonder out loud is, all of these projects are so, I think, individual. So I'm curious and would be willing to sort of be a part of the conversation on how it is that we standardize our approach to these types of contracts, because there are, I think, different attributes for these projects that really make them sort of special and one-off. I just don't know if that's the case for each of the projects. But I hear you from the contract perspective. Maybe there's a way for us to sort of streamline or standardize that process.
The industry we're beginning the fourth decade of the independent power industry. The terms and conditions have been litigated in many forums, especially in California. We can standardize a lot of these contracts and just have specifics to the site, and perhaps some exceptions for specific unusual financial circumstances. But the financial circumstances on most of these are fairly typical. So really we can standardize a lot of these contracts. One component my office objects to is the number of buyout options, because you don't get a buyout option for free, and we would prefer a much more limited set of buyouts, perhaps just a buyout at the end of the contract term, or a right of first refusal.
Very good.
If I could add a few things, and Randy Howard, LADWP, the department is blazing the trail. There's certainly in this space of the transformation going on. We as a utility in California started with one of the lowest percentage of renewables, moving quickly to the forefront of having some of the most. And so there's not a perfect playbook, and so it is taking a lot of effort on all parts here to work together and ensure that everybody is on top of the information and putting the process and the protocols in place as the market continues to change, the technology continues to change, and somewhat our approach on what we're looking for. We've talked before, looking more at diversification in locations to ensure that any one time wind is probably blowing, whether it's Pacific Northwest, if it's the Wyoming area, or if it's our local Tehachapi Mountains. And in the solar, ensuring that if we have that puffy cloud syndrome that could occur and cause ramping up and down on the solar panels, that we have panels that are in different regions to ensure that at some time we have that level of reliability because of the large number of projects that we're bringing in. But we also looking at diversifying the financial structures to ensure that we're always finding the best approach for our ratepayers to minimize these costs, but also minimize the risk. So we're trying some different things. This was a unique approach. It's strategically located at this site, the Beacon site. We have staff that work across the freeway. We have a large electrical station. We have more staff just down the road. So it's a location that long-term has a lot of viability for the ownership and operation of an asset that we think will have, more than 100 years of value, because the sun's going to continue shining on that site regardless of the type of solar technology we put on it. So we've spent time on standardizing our contracts themselves. In the bundled all bidders had to utilize the same contract, and we worked from there. Challenges remain on how you interconnect that criteria. It remains on some of the environmental issues. Those are some uncertainties that we don't always control all the elements in for the timeline. But I think we've done a very good job on the financial analysis. We brought in a third party, worked with them to build a model that our team can use for any project, and we've shared some of those results to assist us in looking at different financial structures, looking at the amount we might look at for how we're going to levelize those costs, how we're going to look at the buyouts. But it continues to be an evolving process. So we've met with both the ratepayer advocate and the CAO's office, and we concur to find better ways to work together as we continue to bring these projects forward.
Very good. With that, what we'll do is go ahead and take speaker cards. Thank you so much for your presentation. I think there's only one card. William Ernst Schennewerk. Come on up.
Mr. Chair, 1 minute.
William Schennewerk. I'm retired. I'm a ratepayer in Los Angeles, and I've been doing this stuff for a while. And every time I run the numbers, I come out with a full boat cost of around 25 cents a kilowatt hour. So I'm afraid what's going to happen is these guys that put up these plants, somehow they have some special financing and insurance or something, or tax credits or something. When that all goes away, these guys are going to drop the tools on the ground and leave.
Great, thank you very much. With that, we don't have a quorum. We'll go ahead and communicate to the full council the following recommendation on items 1 and 2, that we approve the Department of Water and Power's request for authority to execute agreements with Hecate and SunEdison for development of the specified beacon sites consisting of power purchase agreements, competitive power offer purchase agreements, purchase option agreements, interconnection agreements, and associated ground lease agreements pursuant to Charter Section 607, and the associated in-basin feed and tariff agreements. Very good. That will be the recommendation. Item number 3.
Mr. Chair, item number 3 relates to DWP report and City Attorney ordinance as well, relative to proposed relicensing process agreement with the Department of Water Resources, including amendment number 5 to the cooperative agreement with the associated, regarding the associated with California Aqueduct.
Good morning again, Randy Howard, Department of Water and Power. What we are seeking today is your support and approval of a cost-sharing agreement with the State of California Department of Water Resources, and also an amendment number 5 to our contract for cooperative development of the West Branch of the California Aqueduct. The department constructed and operates the Castaic Power Plant. It's a pump storage facility. It's a jointly owned facility in the sense of the state water flows through that facility as well, except for this summer because we don't have water coming south. But they bring the water in through the Pyramid Lake into the aqueduct system. It generates on the once through going down. We provide that energy to the state for that water, but we have the privilege, we have a lower lake to use that facility as a pump storage. So we're able to pump the water back up when we have excess, store it, and use it to generate electricity during the critical peaks. We think that value will continue to be beneficial for our ratepayers in the long term with the expansion of renewables. The projects that were just approved on the solar will be some of the first projects into the new transmission line. That new transmission line will also interconnect with Castaic, and so we'll be able to take renewables directly from their generating source right into the Castaic if they're not necessary to meet the needs of the city at the time, store it, and then bring it in when we need it. So very beneficial to our ratepayers. The project was built a number of years ago, and it is under the FERC jurisdiction. FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, has jurisdiction over the siting of these types of hydroelectric projects. So it is time to go forward and seek a renewal of that license, and it's a very complicated process. It's almost like starting a new environmental process to build a new plant. So what we have before you today is the cost-sharing agreement with the state on how we would cost-share to pay for that relicensing process. It tends to be about a 7-year-plus process. The license that that project sits under also includes a number of state facilities, so other hydroelectric facilities and part of the aqueduct that the city is not a participant in, at least from the power side of the house. So what we're seeking in that cost-share agreement is the ability to pay our share and contribution towards that, but also put in place a management structure on how those decisions will be made on the relicensing process, as well grant additional authority to the department to make some of those decisions without bringing him back before this committee or the full council. And the reason being is the state will do most of the procurement through their procurement process, very similar to the way we might approach it directly. But upon those decisions, we would like the authority granted to us to be able to approve those without then having to go through our process. If any of the procurement activities are done by the department, then they would go through the normal procurement process that we have in place. And the amendment to the existing cooperative agreement is meant to align the termination dates of that cooperative agreement to the new FERC license. So as the city makes investments in this relicensing process, we wanted to ensure that the term of the existing cooperative agreement would align with whatever that new license is. And the expectation is it'll probably be 30 years. We're seeking a 50 years. It'll be someplace in there between 30 and 50. We wanted to make sure. The termination currently is, I believe, 2044. So we wanted to bring that out further in time. So we'll take questions at this point, but we would like your approval of this agreement.
If we could have the CAO, any comments on?
Well, we've worked closely with the department and support approval of this project.
Very good. Ratepayer advocate, any comments on this project? None?
We support this. It can be a long and uncertain process,
All right.
but it's important to move ahead for this.
Mr. Blumenfield?
Well, in the CAO report, there was something about non-DWP costs associated with the East Branch. How are we dealing with that issue?
So the state aqueduct, as it comes up, the grapevine, it splits, goes in an East Branch, and then it comes in a West Branch. The Castaic facility is located on the West Branch, but as indicated, the entire license includes those hydro facilities on the East Branch as well as the West Branch. So our 50% cost share is related to the West Branch, and we'll pay no cost share on the East Branch side of the facilities, and that's the agreement.
Okay, and the CAO had noted concerns about that in your report.
Well, the concerns we had involved a cost estimate that we reviewed, and it wasn't certain that the estimate was pertaining only to the West Branch or including both of them. The department, though, does have within its contract the ability to pay only for its own costs. It's just that the estimate did not appear clear at the time.
Okay, and then the other concern, I guess it's a 3-year-old estimate. Is that a problem in some way?
The agreement would be that as soon as we receive the proposals from the vendors as to conducting this work, every year we'll be going forward to our board with an ask for a budget associated with those expenditures, and we'll be able to ensure that we have sufficient funds and have a better idea of what it will cost. The department hired a consultant to come in and help us do the analysis of what we thought it would cost. We have no other facility that currently is FERC jurisdictional for this licensing process, so we don't have that type of experience. And we brought them in to assist us. We've never had to relicense this facility. They gave us some of these estimates, so it's based on that consultant's report. Again, the actuals will come in. It is our expectation that they'll be lower than this estimate.
Council member, if in the event that those costs do exceed the $50 million requested, it will be a requirement to come back to the council, mayor, and to the board for additional expenditure authority. So in time, we'll know.
Thank you.
Very good. There aren't any cards on this item, so the communication to the full council will be to approve the department's request for authority to execute the proposed relicensing process agreement with the Department of Water Resources and amendment number 5 to the cooperative agreement as specified.
That's right.
All right. Item number 4.
Item number 4, DWP City Attorney reports and ordinance relative to proposed amendment number 1 to the Open Access Transmission Tariff Agreement. We have staff from DWP and CO and the City Attorney as well.
Again, Randy Howard, LA DWP. What we have is our open access transmission tariff. The city owns and operates about 27-28% of all the transmission in the state of California. We serve about 12% of the population, but we have a very extensive transmission system, and we have a transmission line that goes up to the Columbia Gorge in Oregon and Washington. We have transmission that goes to our power plants in Utah, in Arizona, in Nevada, Hoover Dam, and into the Owens Valley. So a pretty extensive transmission system. Under the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission requirements, they require that we sell our excess transmission when we're not using it, make it available to others to use, and it also brings in incremental revenue to the city that helps offset our cost. Currently, we derive about $25 million a year by selling excess transmission. We have a number of counterparties that use that transmission, primarily marketing entities, but also some other utilities that have a need on occasion to work around. Maybe they have a transmission outage, and so they'll use our transmission system. The department put forward an OAT in 2001, and it was done by a cost of service study, and it's currently the OAT that we use today to charge any of the users of that transmission. So we have a website that shows how much is available, when it's available, and customers can reserve that and use that as it's available. What we have before you today, are seeking your support and approval of, is a new OAT, an updated OAT. So since that 2001 timeframe, we have not updated the rates. And so the rates need to be refreshed. We brought in a third-party consultant to go through, assist us with the cost of service. We brought in outside counsel, FERC counsel based in Washington, D.C. They assisted us with ensuring that we met all of the FERC requirements. And we're not FERC jurisdictional in this OAT, but it was our desire to use their pro forma and follow those guidelines that any other utility would use that is FERC jurisdictional. And we attempted to do that to the extent possible. There are a few exceptions, and those are more related to the specific requirements of the department and ensuring that we could meet those in the operation. Our transmission is built first and foremost to meet our native load. It's built for our customers. It's built for our projects. A lot of the transmission is also, though, jointly owned. So we're a part owner in that. Other utilities around us, the municipal such as Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena, are participants in a number of projects. Even some were jointly built with Southern California Edison. We still might be the operating agent. This is really only related to our transmission. So if it's a joint-owned project, it's related to our share of that joint-owned project that we would make available and accessible for third parties. So it's an updated. We had a lengthy process of stakeholders. We sent it out back in August. We received comments. Part of the FERC process is to post everybody's questions and comments equally so all participants could see that and give us input. We then responded to other comments. Glad to say, for the bulk of our rates in this tariff, the rates have gone down. And not up, but they've gone down, and that was a very positive outcome. Our transmission is getting older, though. It's being amortized. It's being utilized at a greater degree as we add renewables. We're utilizing more of that excess in a full-time basis. So our rates have gone down on most of them. We also added some new schedules And those schedules are more for other entities that might want to use our transmission but also need some incremental services because they're moving renewable energy. And that renewable energy can be a little more variable than historical type of energy that might have moved. Where someone might have scheduled a flat amount, it was a flat amount throughout that period of time. They might schedule now something out of a wind farm and the conditions changed a little bit. It's variable. We're going to help smooth that out for them. And so there's rates now associated with that. So we would seek your approval and be willing to answer any questions you might have related to the
A quick question before we go to the CEO on the smoothing out of their we host a transmission on our ability to smooth that out for the benefit of our transmission. Does that mean that we expend some energy as well to sort of help change the volatility in the lines?
So it could be a level of, we could provide some level of energy, we could provide some level of inertia to manage that.
And that's built into the tariff?
It is.
Okay, very good. CAO?
Well, to add to Randy's comments, regarding the reduction in rates, the total decrease in revenue to the department anticipated is about $1.7 million. It's primarily due, as Randy mentioned, to decrease in transmission service rates, a decline in the number of short-term transmission service requests we've seen in the recent past 3 years, and an absence of major capital expenditure program improvements. There will be some improvements coming, as you've previously approved. The Barron Ridge Renewable Transmission Project will be one of the larger projects that's going to affect this cost of service. So the current rates are a reduction, but they will adjust over time. So we recommend approval of this project.
Very good. Ratepayer advocate on this project? Or on this OAT, rather?
These revenues offset costs that would be paid by the native customers. So we support this as assisting or helping our local ratepayers.
Very good. Mr. Blumenfield, any questions?
Comfortable with this, thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's go ahead and take public speakers. Lon Peters and Christopher Chuang, please. Come on up. Good morning.
Chairman Fuentes, Councilmember Blumenfield, my name is Lon Peters. I'm the Integrated Resources Planning Administrator at Glendale Water and Power. I'm responsible for GWP's transmission contract rights and responsibilities. I ask you today to table the transmission tariff ordinance and, if necessary, approve only the large generator interconnection agreement because the process used by the department to impose these rate changes has been utterly and uniquely opaque. For example, we only recently found out through a Public Records Act request that on December 30th, the department increased the proposed rate with a stealth posting on the web. Glendale received no notice at all of that posting, which gave parties 1 week to submit comments. No notice means no process. This is not the way a public agency should conduct its business. Glendale is completely dependent on LA's transmission system to get electricity to our residents and businesses. We expect to ask for additional transmission rights in the future from LA to meet our obligations to serve our native load, our retail load, and deliver new renewables. Contrary to what you might hear, the department has not given us the computer models and the data that we requested. In over 3 decades of experience in the industry, in well over a dozen rate cases, I've never seen a situation in which a utility simply refuses to share models and data in native electronic format. Thus, we have no idea if the proposed rates are reasonable, even though they're going down. Also, the ordinance states the legal standard for LA's tariff, treating Glendale like LA treats itself, but the tariff doesn't actually meet that standard. First, on your agenda today are ordinances that you've approved for the purchase of solar energy under several long-term contracts. LA will use its transmission network to deliver that power to its residents for decades, while Glendale can only get that same transmission service for only up to 3 years. Secondly, the proposed rates explicitly include the cost of transmission facilities that Glendale is and will be prohibited from using, but LA does use. This discrimination against Glendale is clear, pervasive, and contrary to national energy policy. Thank you.
Chairman Fuentes and Councilmember Blumenfield, my name is Christopher Chuang. I'm a Senior Assistant City Attorney at the City of Burbank. I am here on behalf of Burbank to express our objections to the proposed tariff, both in terms of process and substance. We respectfully disagree with their analysis of Section 201F that FERC does not apply at all to LA. The tariff is subject to FERC jurisdiction if it fails to conform to federal laws. It is in everyone's interest that LA adopt a tariff that is consistent with federal policy and established practices. Under federal law, there is a process for all transmission providers, including LA, to follow when it increases its rates or changes its tariff. This includes providing stakeholders with a meaningful iterative process that includes more than the exchange of one set of questions. LEDWP has only provided one stakeholder meeting in November for their process. At the meeting, we were told there will be no subsequent forums to discuss the tariff. LEDWP provided a number of non-responses or incomplete answers to our questions. We have sent letters to LEDWP requesting our respective staffs work through these issues, but it has refused to do so. The aforementioned process would not satisfy customary industry practices or FERC policies. As to substance, there are problems with the tariff's rates and terms. The tariff rates violate FERC's principle of cost causation by including costs of facilities that tariff customers have no right to use. It also fails to give Burbank credit for certain transmission projects that Burbank and LA have been joint participants. The proposed tariff deviates from the FERC pro forma OAT in ways that discriminate against tariff customers. One is the absence of network integration transmission service. Another is the failure to offer redispatch service to its tariff customers. It also limits tariff customers' transmission service for up to 3 years, but does not apply this rule to itself. We disagree with the interpretation of the 3-year IRS rule offered at the board meeting by LADWP. There are other provisions which are inconsistent with the pro forma OAT and result in other forms of discrimination. We respectfully request that the OAT be tabled for consideration at a later time while we work this through with staff, but we have no objection to the approval of the interconnection procedure and agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy, would you like to respond to any of that?
Sure.
Understanding that this committee could communicate this item to the council, and there still would be time before the full city council actually were to agendize this, and so I would hope that we could figure how to address some of the concerns, certainly the ones that are alleged in terms of our communication to our partner agencies here. So that's a long way to say that there's a little bit of time between this committee and the council. If this item, well, there isn't a way to vote, we're going to communicate it out, but if you could just address some of that before we do that.
Gladly. And we've heard these comments. We have met with both these parties regarding these comments multiple times. First and foremost, neither one of the cities currently take any OAT service, nor have they historically. They are partners with us in transmission projects. They both are what's called inside of our balancing authority. So we work on transmission together in that endeavor. What we're talking about today is our OAT, and that's for LADWP's excess transmission when it has excess. So I just want to put clarity to that. Both parties have transmission contracts with LADWP for some of the city-owned transmission. They're long-term contracts or negotiated contracts. Again, that's not necessarily what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today are really the ability of users to use our system on the short term. We're not out building transmission to resell to other parties. That is not our business. We have no desire to do that. What we're trying to do is use the excess to bring in some incremental revenue to our ratepayers so they get some benefit for these resources until the day that we need to use them all. As spoken to in the solar projects, we're building a new transmission line for those solar projects. So we're in conjunction building the solar, building a new transmission line. We're not building that transmission line to provide it to other parties. That was not the intent. LADWP is issuing the bonds, funding that entire project on its own. As to some of the FERC issues, we believe we brought in the best FERC counsel. They have worked with us hand in hand through this process. We do believe everything before you is compliant. We've had an OAT in place. All we're doing today is amending the rates and actually reducing them. So this is more favorable. What we're more interested in is we currently have about 15 counterparties using our transmission. We want our transmission to be more competitive and those parties to use it more. What you're hearing today is from two parties that currently are not using that transmission and not paying any of the existing rates, and we're trying to lower our rates. So we've agreed, we've had discussions with them after the board meeting. We've had discussions actually for a long period of time. We have some ongoing issues regarding what's called our balancing authority, and that's a different forum, a different discussion. But our commitment is to continue to work with them. I'd make that commitment to both of you. We're going to get some of their issues resolved, but we do not believe it's within this forum of the current oath that's before you today.
Very good. That being said, we will go ahead and communicate this item to the full City Council. When it will be agendized, I'm not certain yet, but it will be sent as a communication since we can't take a formal action. There isn't a quorum here. But the communication will be to request that the City Council approve the Department's request for authority to execute Amendment Number 1 to the Open Access Transmission Tariff Agreement and the associated ordinances granting authority to the Department to enter into subsequent agreements.
Mr. Chair, all these 4 items on this agenda are scheduled for council on July 1st.
Okay. Very good. It doesn't appear that there's any public comment cards for general public comment. Very good. We're adjourned.